Hello and welcome to True North News. My name is Andrew Zettel. We are super excited to have a great guest on the show, Mr. Blake Kennedy. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for coming, Andrew. It's really a pleasure to be here today.
And we're filming this today on the day of legalization of marijuana, but we're actually not going to be talking about that. We're going to be doing that a little bit later with Daniel when the dust, or I guess when the smoke settles on the marijuana file. But today we're talking about Canada's second favorite drug, I think, which is alcohol, and particularly about alcohol sales. But Blake is a bit of an expert here, or an enthusiast, I suppose, when it comes to wine. So what have you brought here on the show for us, Blake?
Well, Andrew, I wanted to share a couple things with you. We're going to talk today about, we're going to compare two wines. One is from Ontario, because I want to show that off. This is Cave Springs. They're down in the village of Jordan. This is their Cabernet Franc from 2016. It's selling for about $18 at the LCBO and from their own chateau. And this is
awesome.
Ministerio de las Viñas. This is a Grand Reserve from 2010. In Spain, aging the wine is very important.
Oh, okay.
They have various standards for how long you have to keep your wine in oak before you can call it a Grand Reserva, a Reserva, a Crianza, or Joven. This one has been aged for 24 months in oak and more in the bottle, and this thing is ready to drink now. So the reason I picked these two is we're going to have two medium-bodied red wines. One is made from 100% Cabernet Franc, and one is made from a blend of Garnacha, what the French call Grenache, Tempranillo, and Carignan, which the French call Carignan. Both very similar in terms of approach. In terms of structure, two wildly different outcomes in terms of finest product and what they're trying to communicate.
Okay.
So I thought we'd compare them side by side, see what we like, see what we don't like, see what the differences are.
Awesome.
When you taste side by each.
And I have to confess to you, I know generally what tastes good with wine, but I am probably, like most people watching, not an expert. So this is just awesome to get to know a little bit about it. Both of these were available in the local LCBO, or where did you have to go to get them?
These ones are both available at the LCBO. They're both pretty standard offerings. Cave Springs, this is one of their bulk wines. They have a lot. They're mostly known for their Riesling. I used to be a member of their wine club where they ship you 4 bottles every month for standard rate. Now I just kind of got tired of it. But they're a good producer. This is an interesting wine for $18. So I picked this very deliberately. I haven't tried the 2016. It was a cold year in Ontario.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the difference is from what I'm used to from the 2014 and 2015, which I thought was tremendously valuable.
So would you say, like, how long have you really been into wine, getting to know all the ins and outs?
Well, for me, it started with learning cuisine.
Okay.
I started there. My educational background is French and Russian. So understanding the geography, understanding the culture, which is a huge part of old world wines, just came very naturally to me. I took 3 courses from the Wine and Spirits Education Trust a few years ago. So I have my level 3 with honors, or with distinction is what they call it.
Okay.
But no, I would say for about 4 years this has been more than a passing fancy for me. And I think we're going to try some pretty good stuff. I've tried both of these of different years before. I expect them to be, their differences and the similarities to be very pronounced.
Okay. And when we're, like, before we get into it, what should I really be looking for or focusing on?
We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
There are 3 different aspects to tasting. One is what you see with the eye. One is what you smell with the nose, and finally what we taste with the tongue. We're going to talk a little bit about just exactly what these 2 wines are doing in each way. They will look fairly similar. They've both seen a fair amount of oak.
So run me through again. This one you're pouring right now.
Yep. This is from Cave Spring
Cave
Vineyards.
Spring Vineyards. So
And they're in the village of Jordan, just getting to the Niagara Peninsula.
okay, so the local, or more local,
Yeah.
as you might say, and then compared to the international.
Compared to the Spanish entry, which is from the region, I believe it's, oddly enough, they don't. This is from the region of Carignan.
Okay.
So that's a warmer region of Spain. That will be expressed.
Okay.
So I poured one for both of us. Help yourself too.
Okay. Daniel's working the camera today,
Yes.
so we make sure we get him.
You always got to keep the crew happy, right? So that will be the Ontario one. This will be the Spanish.
The Spanish one right here. Excellent.
So if you tilt them forward a little bit and look through,
Ontario on the left, yeah?
Ontario on the left,
Okay.
you're going to see a little bit of a difference. Very similar colors. In wine tasting, we refer to that as ruby.
Ruby, okay.
So there's 4 colors of red. There's purple, ruby, garnet, and then finally you see this from old one, orange.
Orange, okay.
And if you look out towards the rim, it tends to get a little bit clearer. I think you'll see the Spanish one is a little bit darker.
A little bit darker, definitely, yeah.
It's more intense. It's more opaque, and there are reasons for that, and we'll talk about those in a second.
Now with these, do we only ever hold them by the stem here? Is this?
Yeah.
Okay, so we hold them by the stem when we're doing that?
If you hold them by the bowl, the heat from your fingers will transfer to the glass, heat the wine up,
Okay.
and alter the aromas that you sense.
Okay, good to know.
So we've seen a difference in the wine. So we call this I would call this a medium plus ruby with a medium minus intensity ruby rim. This would be a fully intense ruby core with a medium ruby rim. So we see a slight difference. There's no sediment in either one of them. There's no bubbles. So we don't observe a whole lot. They kind of look similar. Just with Cabernet Franc, this usually tends to be more of a purple hue. This one's coming out more in a ruby. So we can wonder about why that might be. I would suspect that the climate or the weather of 2016 being cooler kind of took the extraction down a little bit.
Okay.
That would be my offhand guess. Now the first thing we want to do is test to make sure these are clean and not faulted. And what we're going to do is we're just going to swirl them like this.
Ooh. Oh, that's a little trickier. I should use my right hand.
Yeah. And then get a nice big nose. So you don't smell anything. This is clean. There's nothing unclean. You're not smelling things like what you might smell in a bathroom. There's no wet cardboard.
Okay.
This is a clean wine. We have no worries about drinking it.
Right. Okay. So it's just supposed to smell
clean.
Like what you'd expect out of wine.
Right. There are, especially certain wines, have a real pronounced affinity for smells like barnyard.
Oh.
Smells like lots of earthiness. That's very deliberate. It's very fine
I
when it's
see.
part of the mix.
Okay.
If all you smell when you put your nose in there is like you're standing in a pile of cow flop, you have a faulted wine.
Okay.
And I have tasted some from Ontario that are just like that.
So this Spanish wine here.
This Spanish wine, we're going to give it a nice big swirl and then give it a nose. Now, do you smell the difference?
That definitely smells different. Yeah.
So right away we can tell the difference, and we're going to talk about kind of what we smell. Obviously, both are very fruity.
Yeah.
Right. So in this one, we kind of ask, what kind of fruits does this make us think of?
Ooh, it's hard to tell. What would you pick out in that?
Definitely getting some currants. Definitely getting some black currants.
Okay.
A little bit of plum.
Yeah.
Some black cherry.
Black cherry. Okay, let me try that a little bit again. See if I can pick out the cherry in it. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where until you're
Right.
kind of primed to.
Right. And that's part of learning the art of tasting. You kind of narrow down, do I smell fruit? Yes.
Right.
What kind of fruit? Is it tree fruit? Is it citrus? Is it red fruit? Is it black fruit? And you kind of narrow it down in your head and say, okay, I smell a little bit of this and a little bit of this.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you're smelling stuff like gravel and
Yeah.
river rocks and all this other kind of stuff. I think the famous tasting note is cat's pee on a gooseberry bush or something like that. Someone once described the wine complimentary, but
And these are things that are being like added in at some point.
these are
these are just
these are the natural aromas of the grape
okay.
being brought out in the fermentation process.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's the similarities to other aromas that wouldn't come out just in the grape. It's released through that process.
Right. So as they're fermented, as they age, and one thing that we can smell of if you get into this.
We're on the Ontario still.
We're on the Ontario still. Whenever you're smelling things like smoke or oak or vanilla or chocolate, you know that this has seen some time aging in oak barrels.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that will have an effect on it.
Right. So if you don't get any of that, then we're maybe talking about something that was aged in stainless steel or concrete or something else.
Okay.
And oak adds a lot of things to wine. It adds flavor if it's on the newer side. It adds what we call tannins, which is that drying stuff that we taste on our taste buds and on our palates, and all that kind of stuff. I would think that this has probably seen a little bit of oak based on what I smell here. So we're getting into some spicy fruit. I think you'll definitely get some. So you're getting some florals, some purple flowers and stuff like this, and then you're getting into things like baking spices with cinnamon and nutmeg and stuff like that. A little bit of green herbal stuff. That's a brief outline of that wine, what we smell. Now this one, we get in the Spanish offering, and we're getting a lot of oak. We're getting a lot of vanilla. We're getting a little bit of smoke. I mean, this has spent 24 months in new French oak. So when you taste a lot, you start telling the difference. Oh, that's French. That's American oak. They taste very different, smell very different. But that's
I was gonna say I don't know if this makes sense to say or that the terms, but I was gonna say it smells like not baked, but kind of kitchen sort of. That's what I was gonna say.
That's a great observation. As we get into a warmer area of Spain like Cariñena, we expect that fruit is getting riper. It's warmer, it sees more sun, and therefore the quality and the characteristic of the fruit that we taste, we're getting away from just ripe fruit. We're getting into jammy fruit, maybe a little bit, baked fruit, all that kind of stuff, really ripe fruit. This is what we're getting. We're getting into a little bit of baked and dried fruit here in the Spanish offering.
Okay.
So we definitely have a difference there. But beyond just the fruit differences in the aroma, you're getting a little more complexity out of this one. You're getting a little more of the minerality. You're getting a little more leather and a little bit in the animal smells, just a little wee bit. And that is what old world wines are all about. So we talk about new world versus old world. In the old world, they're not just giving you something to drink.
Okay.
And we'll drink in a second.
Right.
They're giving you a piece of the land. They're giving you a piece of their culture. They're all about, connecting you to a place and to a time. And often this is meant to go with food. This one here, let's just go ahead and give this a sip, the Ontario one first.
Oh boy. Okay. We still should sniff before?
Yeah, I just like doing it. Just don't have it.
Oh, okay.
And we'll just take a little bit of a sip. Swish it around the mouth and.
Okay, you keep it in there. Okay. Good.
Yeah, you want to let your tongue and your palate kind of observe. You're gonna feel a little bit of a tingle from the tannins. And if you breathe in, usually you can kind of gauge the alcohol content by that, or if there's a problem with the alcohol being on the balance, because you feel a burn.
Oh,
I don't get a burn out of this.
No.
This alcohol is very well integrated within the wine. So, I mean, I have to say, for $17, this is a really well-made wine.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's approachable. I mean, it tastes like kind of what you smell. You're getting maybe a little more on the red fruit when you taste it, a little more strawberry, a a little more lighter cherry than dark. So there's a little bit of a difference. I'm getting a little bit of dark chocolate, which I expect from the oak. But that is mostly a wine. Could you sit out there on the, on the balcony and drink a glass of that and feel pretty good about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that goes back to what you're saying about the New World wine, something from Ontario, not necessarily being paired with food like what we're talking about with the Old World.
Right.
Old World.
Right. It's more drunk to be appreciated. It's meant to stand alone. That's a common feature of New World wines. Not everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, they're not bound. Like, Ontario's only been making wine really since 1990 or so.
Okay.
Climate change has been very kind to winemaking here in Ontario.
I can imagine.
So, there's no real sense of place or history. They've been making wine here in Carolina for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
So they want the wines that they're producing now to evoke that history that they've had.
Mm.
There is no real history for us to worry about. They're just making an enjoyable drink. And I think that passes the test. I think it's a...
Now, so I was going to ask, like, you're saying that's a great wine for about $17, $18.
I think it's good value, yeah.
Is that what you've come to expect from some of the Ontario wines, like a reasonable price and a pretty good, or is this kind of really a standout from that perspective?
I think in that price range, Cave Springs with their Cabernet Franc is absolutely one of the best in Ontario. It's difficult. Ontario is a very expensive region.
Right.
We'll talk about that in a minute, why that might be. But I think, from an Ontario offering for $17, a sommelier expression, this is a good quality wine.
Okay.
We're not getting into very good yet.
Yeah.
You don't expect to for $17.
Of course.
But this is a good quality wine. It's not meant to age. You can age it maybe a year or two, but it's ready to go out of that bottle.
Awesome.
And even in a tough year climate wise, this delivered. The Cave Springs should be very happy about that.
Awesome. What about the Spanish?
So now we go with the Spanish wine. And with that oak, we're going to find a lot more body and structure. And that oak hits hard. That is a big, full-bodied oaky wine.
Mm-hmm. I know my face, but if you're watching, my face probably doesn't look as professional as Blake's here as he's tasting the wine. I'm going,
This is full-bodied, and this is exactly what this winemaker is trying to produce. That extended aging, that big extraction from a warm climate. They're not going for a subtle approach at all. This is a very typical expression of a mid-range Spanish wine.
And as you were saying you can breathe in and get some of the alcohol content.
Yeah.
How are you comparing the two from that perspective?
Very similar. This alcohol is well integrated. I didn't get any real burn when I inhaled. I mean, the body of the wine is much heavier than the Cabernet Franc. You expect that with a warmer climate and these particular grapes. But this is not necessarily a wine I would take out after I've mowed the lawn. I want something to relax and refresh myself.
I see.
I'm not reaching for this.
Okay. I'm
reaching for this with a steak. I'm reaching for this with a stew. I'm reaching for this with, maybe a salad with some really aggressive cheese and stuff like that. Something big. You've got to match what this wine is.
And when you say body, you're talking about how full the flavor feels.
The mouth feel is exactly right.
Okay. So that's why you want food that
right.
hits as well. Is that right?
And I have to say, it's spent a lot of time in new oak. You expect that to be very rough and drastic on the mouth. The tannins are there, but they're not egregious. They're not supple or soft, but they're not overwhelming. I'm not begging for something to drink to kind of wash it down, but they definitely have an impression. Is this a great wine? Is this an outstanding wine? No, it's not.
Okay.
For $17, I don't expect it to be.
Right.
But is this a wine that no matter what my company, if I've made a good, strong, meal on the plate, could I serve that and be confident that it's going to please everybody? Absolutely.
Right. And so interesting how you're saying these two wines retail for about the same?
Yeah.
Okay, incredible. Is that fairly common? Like to me, it's an imported wine how are they producers able to bring that cost down for Canadian consumers?
The LCBO, and when we talk about one of the things it does well, is when the LCBO hits a producer, like a big producer, they negotiate really hard and they do a good job getting average level wines at a fairly good price.
Okay.
So, I mean, Ministerio de las Viñas, I don't know how big a producer they are, but they're obviously giving up margins on their profit for bulk sale.
For that access into the market
because
in Ontario.
I guarantee you they're probably not selling less than 5,000 bottles at a drop.
Okay, I see.
And probably far more. So they get they lose the margins, but they have the cash in their hand now.
Right.
And the LCBO is one of the biggest purchasers in the world.
So now that we've sampled a little bit, is it gauche to just start sipping away at these, or?
No, go ahead.
Okay,
go
okay.
Ahead. In fact, that allows you to kind of compare. You'll find this is a little more. The acidity in this one's a little bit higher. We expect that from a warmer climate. So, it's have more of a refreshing, kind of zippy type feel. This one's a little more heavy. It's not flabby in terms of having not enough acidity.
Right.
But the acidity level's a little bit lower. Obviously, the body is much heavier. And just the overall complexity of this wine is a little bit higher. New World wines tend to be very monochromatic. Here's your fruit. Here's your oak. Boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not trying to,
monochromatic. You said, so it kind of, yeah, I can kind of sense that now. Kind of flat, is that a word? I don't want to use the wrong word.
Lacking complexity.
Yeah, lacking complexity, okay. You can kind of taste that after comparing the two. That's great, though. Oh, man. It's great that I can kind of pick out, even after just the quick primer, I can pick out a little bit more of what you're talking about with that.
Going back to this, I think the floral notes on the palate come out a lot more. You should taste something
in the Ontario one.
Yeah, something like purple flowers, something like that, violets, all that kind of stuff. Kind of perfumey.
I like how emotional the language is around it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. When we're describing the wine, it's like it really is describing art in a way, very romantic kind of language around that.
Hey, I'm an art student. I think that's why I fell in love so hard with wine culture when I got into it. So.
Now, we're always interested, of course, at TNN about the kind of the politics behind all of this. And I know that being that you're a wine enthusiast, you know a lot about alcohol sale politics. And I think Ontario, at least from what I understand, has a pretty unique situation. But I think a lot of people even watching know LCBO at a beer store. Now you can get some stuff at the grocery store a little bit, but maybe some people aren't sure of how the system works per se. Do you want to briefly describe that for us?
Yeah, it's very multi-layered in Ontario. You do have any wine producer, first of all, is going to have intervention or conflict with or some sort of dealings with the government, usually about 7 different ministries.
Oh, really?
So just to make wine, you need to obviously be licensed with Canada Revenue Agency. You need to get the go-ahead from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. Where you sell is going to be regulated by the LCBO. What kind of wine you're going to be and how you brand yourself in terms of region, all kind of stuff is going to be limited by the VQA, the Vintners Quality Association.
Vintners Quality, okay.
and there's a fee for all these things. And then you've got the Ministry of Environment sticking their hand out because they only allow you to take so many thousand liters per day tops. So when it comes time to harvest and you need to get water to flush off your floor, if you don't have your permit from the Ministry of Environment, you don't get to do that. So even on your own land, even own water beneath your ground, you need another level of government interfering with you.
So essentially it seems to prevent a lot of new entry into the market.
Big time. And when you combine the cumulative effect, especially of the LCBO, the VQA, and the AGCO, you very quickly understand what their agenda is. They want a small number of big producers putting out bulk sales of medium quality wine and paying a huge portion of their profits in taxes.
In taxes, okay.
That is clearly the desire of the government of Ontario.
And you mentioned that, the one of the perks is that LCBO is able to negotiate for those bulk sales from other producers, especially foreign producers. Are there other aspects of this system of alcohol sales, which, from my understanding, is even from the sales side of things, is really tightly regulated? What are some of the things that are positive notes or things that are a benefit to the consumer?
A benefit to the consumer is getting kind of guaranteed pricing. I mean, especially with domestic producers, you have to pay the same rate at the LCBO as the producer is selling in their own house. You can't. The LCBO has to charge the same price, and the producer can't drop their prices. When they sell through the LCBO has a huge markup, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40%.
Okay, 40% markup. That's all taken
by the LCBO.
By the government.
Correct.
Okay.
And the producer itself probably is making pennies.
Right.
So if you are a fan of Cave Springs, and there's no reason not to be, and you really like that Cabernet Franc, and
Cave Springs,
and you want to show some love to them, I would recommend buying from them directly, because they're putting most of their profits into their pocket directly.
Right.
There are some taxes hidden in the price. There's a bulk wine tax, and then there's another volume tax, and a 25-cent bottle deposit, and the HST on top of all of that the producer will have to remit to the government, but it's a fraction compared to what they have to pay when they sell to the LCBO.
What's kind of the ideal reform to the system, I guess? Like, we looked into a little bit Alberta getting out of the brick and mortar kind of business, but keeping a lot of that markup for that revenue. And sometimes when talk privatization, that's the route government's thinking about. Did Alberta get it right? Because I think they did that early 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Or are there other systems in Canada that work better than in Ontario?
Most of the provinces have a similar structure. I think we're getting closer to the Quebec structure. Personally, I think the SAQ, from what I've seen, does generally a better job stocking and making their good stuff more available, more widespread. The LCBO, I mentioned this briefly before we came on the air, has a number of flagship stores. All of them are in the GTA and Ottawa.
Right.
And that's because that's where the politicians live.
And these are mega stores.
These are not necessarily huge in terms of the size or the volume of wine that they sell, but these are where they keep all their premier offerings.
Okay.
So if you're looking for a Premier Cru from Burgundy, chances are when you go to the LCBO at, say, on Northfield around here, it's not going to be one there.
Yeah.
There might be on occasion. It will sell out. They'll have like 8 bottles. They'll be gone. And then you have to wait another year or so to find them.
And what would you spend on something like some of those really high-end wines?
It depends. Really, wine in Europe is a fascinating topic in terms of the pricing.
Yeah.
The prestige of especially France, what they call the appellation or the region that they identify as, really drives the price. So, a famous one that is almost always massively overpriced is champagne.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
You pay for the branding, and you pay through the nose. And everyone loves watching, rap videos, and the guys are popping bottles, and here's my Cristal, and it's $300. And you can probably get a similar offering that doesn't have the champagne label on it, but rather is from a little area called Crémant de Bourgogne, made in the exact same style, exact same grapes, similar ground. You can get for $25.
Right, but they would even call it something different, wouldn't they?
Well, you can only call your wine champagne. You can only call it an
actual champagne
if it's made in that region, if it's made conforming to the standards of that region.
Right.
And champagne is very picky.
Even if it's quite similar, like you say, to something.
You can call it, I mean, that's the thing about the appellation system. It's regulatory. It obviously increases the price that its producers have, but it also gives the consumer some sort of certitude. This is where this wine comes from. This is what it's like. This is what you can expect in some spectrum. And I think it's remarkably helpful. Does it limit some of the market? Sure. But if you have a plot of land in the Champagne region, no one's saying you have to conform to the Champagne standards.
Right.
You can always make wine in France. It's not a problem. You just can't call it Champagne.
You just can't actually brand it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What back to kind of like we were talking about Quebec, like why is it that each province has these systems that almost are in kind of silo? The provincial governments have been working out trade agreements. They seem to be kind of taking baby steps. From my perspective on this, what do you think about that? Can you speak to that a little bit? The interprovincial trade of alcohol.
Some of it is just pure profit seeking by the provinces. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
To not give producers an outlet other than their monopoly, of their vending system. So Quebec has a nascent and very successful cider industry. They've started since the 80s, and they've done it. They're so far ahead of us, you can't even tell. But do you see Quebec ciders in the LCBO?
No.
You have to smuggle them back across the border, but
yeah,
you run the risk.
Fill up the minivan and bring it for all your friends.
You run the risk. I'm not saying that I've done that, but I have on several occasions.
But this is the famous case, isn't it? New Brunswick, isn't it? Of the it was with beer, wasn't it? Of the smuggling across with the RCMP.
And we're gonna pull a guy over for having two 2.4s in his car.
Yeah.
And drag him down. I mean that's government. A perfectly legal product.
Yeah.
And track them across the border, right? That's what happened.
Yeah. Keep tabs on ordinary citizens trying to get alcohol that's made in Canada. How does someone even go about solving that kind of an issue? Like, is there enough of a lobby working against this, or like trying to?
There has been. I went last time I went to the SAQ over in Gatineau. My family in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go there, I'm disappointed with the selection of most of the LCBOs in Ottawa. So I run across the river to the SAQ in Quebec, where despite the fraction of the population, they have a much better selection, better prices, better everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately the only way to get around that kind of a system is have more people willing to smuggle.
So just by actually kind of brute force and ignorance driving the demand for it?
How else do you think marijuana got legal?
Right, just by enough people.
If everybody in the world said, no, I better not touch this, it's illegal.
Yeah.
People wouldn't be celebrating today. But
why is the SAQ so much more effective than the LCBO?
Culture.
But they have the similar kind of monopoly status within the province.
Right, but the consumers are more knowledgeable. So I'm going to be a little bit ethnocentric here, if I may, but the French heritage of the people of Quebec have given them a far better understanding and appreciation for wine and wine culture. Ontario's coming, but it's not there yet.
So you're saying essentially just because, again, it goes back to that creating demand for it, right? That the people in Quebec have created demand for a better product, and so it's on offer by the system.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. So, going back to my example of like a Premier Cru from Burgundy, in the LCBO's defense here, they may not have it very much, but if they get 12 bottles, sit on their shelves for 10, 11 months, and they don't want to carry that inventory. They want to move it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you do that in Gatineau, the product tends to move a lot faster.
Now, okay, so it seemed to be like during the election in Ontario, we had Doug Ford wanted to come in and turn a lot of systems on their head and change a whole bunch. He seemed like more of a free market guy, and we had the Buck a Beer campaign promise. Is he serious about reforming liquor sales in Ontario?
I think he is. I don't think he understands exactly why Buck a Beer isn't around anymore. The province has introduced elevator taxes, so they go up automatically every year, and those are hidden within the cost of the product. So if I'm going to make a product, unless I'm fantastically wealthy and don't care if I make a profit or not, but I think everybody ought to have, this Buck a Beer, I probably can't afford to do it. I'm going to go broke. So, I think he would love to carry through on that promise and have, those, was it Lakehead was whatever the famous one was, Lake something, was the famous bucket beer producer. They're not going to make it if they can't make any money.
Right. But do you hear any politicians kind of seriously talking about reforming the system in any meaningful way?
No, I think most of them aren't really aware of the scope of the problem. And the VQA, I think, is a great example. So I brought another 2 bottles here. We won't open them. I just want to kind of compare it.
Yeah.
When you go to Old World versus New World, this is from a little village in Burgundy called Santenay.
Okay.
And this is from a producer in Ontario called Long Dog Winery in Prince Edward County. Now, both of these carry a regional designation. VQA, Prince Edward County. And this one is Santenay.
Santenay. Yep.
So, in order to be able to call yourself VQA, Prince Edward County, there's several standards you have to meet. Your grapes have to be grown there. They
100%. Everything has to be.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I think you're maybe 15% you're allowed to import, but it has to be from Ontario.
Okay, I see. Yep.
You have to use only vinifera species grapes. So there are some hybrids out there that are popular to some people. Can't use hybrids in VQA grapes. They have to be traditional vis vinifera species. So this is a Pinot Noir from 2014. This is their top offerings called the Opus 1. This is my favorite winery in the province, in spite of everything about the marketing.
Okay.
and there's a general rule when you buy a bottle of wine: critters on the label, stay away.
Is that right?
Stay the hell away.
Any kind of little animal on the bottle, don't bother.
They're marketing to hard-drinking 22-year-old girls. That's not a night you want to enjoy. It's not a wine you want to enjoy. Stay away.
So you want what? Pure text or?
Well, here's the thing.
This guy has a little house on there.
What's the big thing that they're pointing out? What's the thing that draws your eye?
I would say the title there.
The word Santenay.
Santenay. So that's the region.
That's the region.
Where it's from.
Even the producer, you can barely see. It's way down in the fine print there.
Right.
Here, what's the focus? It's on us. It's
right.
on
The brand.
Long Dog.
Yeah.
And that is a classic New World approach. This is a classic Old World approach. Despite that, for my money, Long Dog is the best producer in Ontario right now.
Long Dog, best producer. Okay.
This wine is, I think, $40. This will punch up there with a lot of Premier Crus from the Côte de Beaune, which is a prestigious area of Burgundy. He does a fantastic job. He's an older gentleman. When you go onto his site, there's this little strip of grass that you park on, and these run-down little stones. You walk through this unkept wood to get to his little barn, which looks like it's falling down.
Yeah.
And he is producing upper-tier Burgundy quality wine. It's absolutely fantastic. I was stunned the first time I went there. Found it by accident, and I point everyone I can towards. I'm a fantastic producer.
Amazing. And contrast to this, you were saying about getting that designation where it's from.
Now, you have to pay to do that.
Okay, so you actually you're paying to the VQA.
You have, and further, you get tax breaks on your sales because you're VQA registered.
Oh, okay, I see.
So there's another producer I've enjoyed tremendously, not too far from Long Dog, called the Old Third, and they are a small producer. They have maybe an acre and a half, maybe. And they chose not to be VQA certified. They didn't want to pay the fees because there's such a small limit of production per bottle. The cost is huge. And they decided, well, our marginal cost is more important, we're not going to do that. The VQA took them to court because they mentioned the area of Prince Edward County on their description on the back of the label. We're located in Prince Edward County. At no time did they put this label on or claim to be VQA Prince Edward County, but just happened to mention offhand, we're in the area that we've been known for hundreds of years as Prince Edward County, and they took them to court. Government lost.
Okay.
But I don't know that they ever got their court costs back.
Right. So it's really it reinforces it's a deliberate attempt to shut out
Right.
that competition.
And unlike in Santenay, where despite its history and tradition in Burgundy, and Burgundy has more established history of winemaking there because it used to be done by monks for hundreds of years. And you go to some vineyards and there'll be little walls with those rows of stones. Those are the areas where the monks have studied and decreed that the best grapes come from this area. And those are dedicated by law as Premier Cru or Grand Cru for the very best. And those have been handed down for hundreds of years. But all the wines have to come from there, but there's no coercion about it. And there's no tax benefit to saying, oh yeah, I'm Premier Cru. Oh, you pay less tax than the schlep who's down the street who's just, a mass producer. But the VQA does that. It is bribing through tax policy people to go through their system. And to be a VQA wine, you have to pass their tasting panels.
Okay.
So unlike Santenay, where they will guarantee that the wine is clean and able to be drank, that they will verify that, in this case, this has to come from Pinot Noir. I think they can blend up to 15% Chardonnay and Pinot Gris if they want to. Almost nobody does, but they're allowed to do it if they want. And age in oak, but that's... And there are some yield regulations that they have. But basically, it's not that coercive. This, if the panel decides it doesn't like what you're doing with your wine, not whether it's good or bad, but this isn't the style we want you to go.
Okay.
They can deny VQA certification to any wine they want. And that does not happen overseas.
How often do they release any, are there any stats on how many get rejected by these panels? Would you say it's fairly frequent?
I don't think it's common. When it does happen, it's usually the most ridiculous things. There's another producer in Prince Edward County. I forget his name. He's one of the big ones and well renowned. He made a wild ferment Chardonnay, and it came out to be like a Vin Jaune. It came out to be very yellow color. He fermented on the lees. It was unfiltered. It did a whole bunch of funky stuff. It was really different. Took it over some contests in Europe and absolutely cleaned house.
Really?
Getting incredible scores, gold medals left, right, and center. And the VQA said, no, you cannot say this is VQA. This does not conform to our historical standards. And the response was, what historical standards? We've been growing wine in this county for 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, the old folks are
That's
giving
right.
awards.
Well, the actual experts are giving him awards. What, so when you, are there things you're looking to hear from politicians who are speaking on this? Whether it's trade generally or specifically on alcohol sales?
I think what we end up needing to do is allow people to have more choice.
Okay.
And I don't think the current structures allow nearly enough choice. I think it's very difficult. You point out the barriers to entry.
Right.
I think the protection of the big producers is way too much. I think the power of the VQA is way too much. The taxes on wines here in Ontario are enough to make them, for the most part, uncompetitive. Niagara Peninsula has some of the most per acre expensive land in the world.
Right.
If you want to grow vines in Niagara, you better have a hefty bankroll.
Yeah.
It's just extremely difficult. And then to be going head to head with a producer like this who's probably been in business for 200 years, their debts are paid off generations ago.
Sure.
It's asked and to force these guys to go head to head with these guys, shelf facing to shelf facing.
Yeah.
Puts our producers at a massive disadvantage. And LCBO being the LCBO, because fairness is what we're after, when they feature certain Ontario producers, they don't do it by excellence. They do it by whose turn do we think it is.
Oh, okay.
So you could be a thoroughly mediocre producer, but we're gonna put your ball front and center for the next couple of months because, Charlie, it's your turn.
So it's similar in a way to I'm seeing a lot of parallels to craft beer and the beer industry in a way. And you mentioned earlier about buying directly from the producer.
Yeah.
Now, how simple is that? Are all producers of the smaller scale selling their wines directly to consumers?
Most are. There's one little place I visited last time I was in the county, and they're selling so much they've got a 3-year waiting list for most of their offerings. They don't have a website. They don't have a sign.
You just have to know where to go.
It's word of mouth.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that word of mouth, you're not getting in. And if you do, you'd be disappointed because most of their shelves are empty.
Right.
And they're going to be. So they don't care so much. But most producers have a website. And so, for instance, I mentioned Long Dog. You can go to their website. You can click on. You can order, and they will ship it right to your house.
Amazing.
No
Amazing.
problem. And whenever you're up against a situation, like I say, if you want to reward a local producer, buy your product from him directly and bypass the LCBO.
Amazing. Amazing. This has been awesome. Thank you so much, Blake, for bringing the wines on the show, for giving us a little bit of a primer. I feel already more educated.
It's a fascinating subject. It's not a rabbit hole, it's a rabbit pit. So be very careful when you go in, but it's a fascinating journey. There's so many different facets to explore, and I'm just glad to be able to share it with some people because I really think it's a burgeoning opportunity here in Ontario.
And amazing that, like you said, some of these great wines that we've had tonight, $17, $18, one quite local to be able to support. So it's just incredible. And of course, like we say, we always love the politics behind everything. Yeah. Politics behind wine as well that a lot of people don't get to see.
Yeah, and like I say, I have my own ambitions in the wine industry, cider in particular, and trying to get things set up and understand the labyrinth you have to go through to get set up, and all the permissions you have to get and all the fees you have having to pay. Like the AGCO makes you pay a fee if you're going to offer small samples of food with your wine in your house. It's like $2,000 a year or something like that. Just for that.
Kidding.
Just for that little action, they have their hand on the till.
And you're looking to open up your own cidery, is that it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think in Ontario we can probably make a better beverage with apples than we do with grapes, but we just don't grow the right apples, we don't grow them ripe enough, and we don't ferment them the right way. But I want to show that it can be done.
Amazing. I love it. Well, thank you so much. What do you guys think about the LCBO, about VQA, about everything we've talked about today? Are you guys even wine experts or enthusiasts? Comment below with your favorite wine. And be sure to like the video and share it with all your friends so that they can get to know a little bit more about wine as well. I want to thank Blake Kennedy for coming on the show. And from all of us here at TNN, stay informed, friends.
Thanks for having me. That was awesome.
Wasn't that fun?
That was a blast.
That was great.
We've been having tons of fun with
this. This is by far, I was going to mention, I was like, all guests now have to bring gifts.